CCU Orlando, Natural Awakenings Magazine, and Unity of Nashville present The Authentic Spiritual Journey, a weekly show featuring real and practical spiritual conversations from diverse perspectives here on the Experience of the Soul podcast channel. Today, episode 57, Fixation to Freedom, the Enneagram of Liberation author, Eli Jaxon-Bear. And now your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Hello and welcome to the Authentic Spiritual Journey. My name is Cynthia Alice. I am the host, and I'm here in 818 Studios with my producer.
Hey, my name is Dave Croft. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hello, everybody, and happy Monday as we wrap up July. We wrap up the first month of our second year.
That's right. Happy Monday, happy July, and we're so pleased to have a guest with us today. Before I tell you his name, I just want to say the book that he has written, Fixation to Freedom, has been hugely impactful in my life, in the life of my congregation, and those people I serve. So our guest today, Mr. Eli Jaxon-Bear, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate you being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, RCA. I'm grateful to be here.
It touches me really that with your busy schedule that you made the time. I know that you must love this work because you've dedicated your life to it. Yeah.
I started teaching in the early 80s.
Yes.
So been on the road ever since.
Yes. And I know your wife too has been an important part of your work as well.
Oh, my wife is my beloved Gangaji.
Yes.
Gangaji is a world teacher.
Yes. 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 So we bless both of you in your work. And one of my members, as a matter of fact, was just telling me just the other day how much she's enjoyed some of your YouTube videos and things like that. So as people listen to this, I'm sure it'll awaken them to the power of the work you're doing. So anyway, we welcome you to the show. And it's wonderful to wrap up our 4-week series we've been doing at CCU Orlando, which is our spiritual community. And so the whole show, friends, it's called The Authentic Spiritual Journey for a reason. We're sharing, sometimes we share our learning in real time. We're not trying to look good. We want, we, as a matter of fact, some of the most spiritual times are when we don't look good, as a matter of fact. So we are about the soul, and the work we do is simply having, conversation about spiritual things, how we are putting spiritual principles to work in our lives, and how, in fact, we are growing and evolving as souls. So we're here today. We want to do a quick shout out.
Yeah, we want to give a shout out to our listeners from Belize.
Right. I've only been to Belize once, but gorgeous people, land, everything. So we're welcoming you to our show.
I've never been to Belize.
Well. Let's go on tour.
How is that? That's not like a cruise destination or anything, is it?
It's fab. Are you kidding me? Belize is fab.
I'm showing my ignorance of world geography. Europe, I got you. Europe.
I know, right?
But Central South America, nope.
Okay, well.
We need to change that. We should change that.
That's right. So, okay, we'll have more for you next time
to
our Belize listeners. But bless you on the journey, and we are so glad and again grateful that you're joining us. Also, we're seeing the numbers of people sharing the show go up. That means so much to us because we are really committed to a reawakening consciousness, and we know that begins with ourselves. This is our goal. This is our desire to reawaken to the divine within, and we do that through the practice of spiritual principles. So we want to get right into the show. And Eli, the series we've been doing at this spiritual community where I serve, we just called it your book name, Fixation to Freedom. I pulled in other resources just for people brand new because your book is such a deep dive into the topic of the Enneagram. And so I'd love to hear just a little bit of your process. It's like, I say this often to the congregation if we're studying a book. We don't do a book report. What I share is the impact of the book on my life, and then they glean and find their own, lessons from the work. But what I'd love to hear from you a little bit is about your journey with the Enneagram, because you said already you've been, you've been doing it, 30 plus years now, right?
That's right. Since the early 1980s.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about your journey, and I'm real curious too about your work with your teacher, because in Unity, I don't know if you know much about the Unity denomination. It's not well known globally, but in Unity, especially in the early days, we were called an Eastern Christianity because we believe in the oneness theology that's very much found, say, in Self-Realization Fellowship and the teachings of, Paramahansa Yogananda or Sai Baba. So I think that's why I resonated so deeply with your book and this study of the Enneagram. So if you don't mind telling us a little bit about your spiritual journey in and through all of this work.
Well, that's two different questions. My spiritual journey is very different from the Enneagram.
Oh, good.
I came into the Enneagram kind of in the middle of my spiritual journey. My spiritual journey started when I was 18 years old, and I went to Alabama with SNCC as part of the civil rights demonstrations that led to the Selma to Montgomery March. It was standing on the street as an 18-year-old college freshman facing Ku Klux Klansmen on horses with clubs coming to attack us. It shattered my vision of America and opened me up to something different. And I realized at that point that I was giving my life to freedom. I didn't call it spiritual. I didn't know that's what it meant. But every time I had to give my life to freedom, I was tested. Really? How about this? What about this line? Are you willing to cross this? And each time I did take the test and cross to the other side, something vast opened up. And this became the spiritual context of my life. And so really it was started politically, started for freedom politically, for people who couldn't vote because of the color of their skin. And it then went global into what freedom really means and how much am I really willing to give for freedom. And that brought me to the Enneagram in the early 80s. That was 1965 when I was 18 facing the Ku Klux Klan. Wow. So this is quite some time later now. The Enneagram just personally, I'd say, made my partnership possible. I've been with my partner now since 1976.
Wow.
When we started living together, I had no insight into my own character or nature. I was on this quest. I was on a quest for freedom. I was on a quest for finding the key, the magic, the whatever it would take to set the world free. And I had never had any insight into myself. And the Enneagram really opened my eyes and showed me my fixation and my partner's fixation so that we could actually sit together in truth and open into deeper levels of our intimacy. That's the key for us, was the Enneagram starting as a way of seeing the trips we were laying on each other, seeing our own projections, and then seeing that, whoa, if that's what it is, then what's deeper? And so that really led us into a deep spiritual intimacy, which has been going on now since 1976. So that was how the Enneagram really had its first impact in my life. Then I'd already been teaching, but I was teaching once the Enneagram came in, I had a full structure to see, and I was teaching training therapists to teach a therapist. If you know the person's fixation, first, if you know your own fixation, and if you've dealt with your own fixation, then you're in the possibility of helping others. But you really can't help others until you've finished yourself, because otherwise it's all your own egoic projection.
Totally.
And so that became my way of passing on what I had realized in the context of the structure of the human psyche.
Yes, and you were that was my understanding. You were working as a therapist, and this played and plays a major part of how you are showing people their projections and their personality pieces, and then the deeper wounds, and my question about what you said so far as it relates to the book was, when I had studied the Enneagram previously, I equated it with a lot of other personality tests, for lack of a better word. And so when I started reading your book and saw really how it related to soul liberation, when you really are willing to look at what your pieces are, and it is almost. I'm going to use the word astounding to begin to experience life on a little bit different plane, just with little bits of awareness, as you move forward. So I was amazed at how what I had, I thought was an interesting study, and I had led retreats for staffs and things like that, and used it and thought it was interesting. But the way you write about it in terms of the character fixation, it was like, whoa, okay, this is connecting so many things for me. So my question is, and this is a naive question, are there other people besides you that understand, study, teach this aspect of the Enneagram, as these are character fixations? I mean, because of the way you separate you're saying all these different personalities, but it's like the same fixation. I mean, it's like I finally got it. Maybe I was, I don't know.
Well, it's because
Yeah.
the problem is this system has been around since Pythagoras.
Yes.
2,500 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been underground as a secret mystery school.
Mm-hmm.
So Gurdjieff is the first person who brings it to the West. And when he does, he doesn't have the fixations really delineated the way they are now.
Right.
Its modern incarnation starts with Oscar Ichazo in Chile.
Right.
And starts the Eureka Institute, which is a spiritual center for teaching this. Only he calls it the Enneagram of Personality, which is not that mislabeling.
Yes.
Then Oscar teaches it to Claudio Naranjo, who took it to Berkeley.
Right.
And taught it to some Jesuit priests at Esalen, and he taught it to this Gurdjieff study group in Berkeley, and they all called it Enneagram of Personality.
Right.
So everyone who teaches it either comes from Helen Palmer or from Russ Hudson and from Russ's partner, who's the Jesuit, I forget his name.
Right.
But anyway, they all taught it in the context of the Enneagram of Personality.
Yeah.
So I realized very early on that this can't be true. It's simply not true.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Clinton may be an 8, but he's not the same personality as Idi Amin, who's also an 8, or Slobodan Milosevic, who's also an 8.
Or Donald Trump.
Or Donald Trump, another 8. So they all have the same fixation with very different personalities.
Yes.
So I've been kind of like going against the wind on this since the 1980s, because at the first International Enneagram Conference in Stanford, I presented this material. I thought everybody would get it and people would change, and people would say, oh, he's right. Okay, it's the Enneagram character fixation. Well, the only ones who teach it this way are people who studied with me.
I studied the Helen Palmer material also.
So Helen Palmer's an old friend. I'm from Berkeley.
Yes.
Did her together. I never worked with her.
Sure.
But she's the lineage for most people.
Yeah.
And it's wrong.
Yes, I totally agree.
Because it just kind of puts it in the sphere of Myers-Briggs personality, internet quizzes, at least coming at it from a totally, I knew nothing about it until we brought it up here at church. And on the surface, it absolutely looks like that. Oh, I'm a 9 with a little bit of 1 and 3 sprinkled in. And but the way that you unpack it, it's like, it's not just a way of labeling me, it's a way of understanding how I react to situations, how I react to other people, and what to do with that information. Not just, hey, it's a sticker that you stick on your forehead.
Yeah, right. As I've taught it and as I've learned it, that the temptation, which of course is, we all live in these constant projections. The temptation is now to identify now with the number.
That's right. That's the great nightmare. That's why I even stopped teaching it for a while, because I couldn't bear. I couldn't bear overhear people say, "Oh, I'm a 6, and what's your number? Oh, you're a 7. That's why you're acting this way." It was so horrifying to me that I stopped teaching for a couple of years because I just couldn't bear it.
Yeah.
So that's how it gets misused. But then everything sacred gets misused.
Exactly. Especially now, and everything is, well, that's another topic. But well, the thought that I've been working with too, and I don't. If you said this in the book, I didn't see it. But one of the things I know about the soul is, we have many lifetimes. We teach reincarnation. I teach reincarnation, and we have younger souls, we have older souls. And I also think that the levels of awareness, I mean, yes, people have the same character fixations and different personalities, but also, um, the awareness levels seem to be, to me, related to what's the level of the soul that's here. If somebody's a fairly young soul, saying the one with the most toys wins, they're not going to have an awareness of their character fixation the way somebody who's been born lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, who's done a lot of spiritual work. And for me, that was kind of helpful in just framing it that way in my mind, because it's like, okay, this person's an 8, this person's an 8, or this person's a 2, this person's a 2. Yes, there are personality differences, but the levels of awareness are, there's like this great chasm between those levels of awareness. So it seems to me to be related to also to the, for lack of a better word, whether it's a young soul or an old soul. Do you agree with that?
You know who agrees with you is Pythagoras. The Enneagram comes from Pythagoras.
Yes.
And Pythagoras is the first person recorded that I know of who talks about the transmigration of souls. And in his day, in 2,600 years ago, where he was living in the Mediterranean, the Greek Mediterranean, jokes were made about him. That he walked by one day and saw a man beating his dog and begged the man to stop because he recognized the dog from his past life. And so that's how they would laugh about Pythagoras.
Right.
But Pythagoras, what's interesting is, in conjunction with what you're saying, Pythagoras said that all of his knowledge comes from being able to be receptive to what he's already lived before. That his past lives are informing this life.
Yes, I remember that I can't remember where I read that now, that he had a lot of memory of past lives as well. Yeah. And would remember. Yes, I now remember. I had totally forgotten that. That's interesting. Well, yes, and I have memory of my several of mine, although sometimes those bleed throughs are pretty hard to deal with. I don't know. There's moments it's like, oh, great, another awareness. More work to be done. I also love in the book where you talk about the Enneagram as a wisdom mirror. I feel that's a really deep statement. If we are really willing to look at ourselves, the courage that takes. And I said to my congregation, doing this work it's really not for the faint at heart. It's for the ones who want to be free more than anything,
That's right.
and who are willing to really see the aspects of ourselves that we don't want to see.
That's right. And the possibility is for those who are ripe and ready.
Yes.
Is you wake up right now in this moment by simply stopping everything.
Yes. Yes.
That's it. If you stop and your mind is quiet and you open, then you can hear yourself. You can hear the deeper silence. And when you hear the deeper silence, you reveal to yourself and you can realize who you are, what you are, where you are. And that realization then becomes the foundation. That's what soul's awakening to its true nature. Then all the other stuff, you start to see it as the traps that try to ensnare you back into fixation.
Oh, yes. And projection is one of the worst. I haven't talked a lot about that in this particular series, just because it's kind of inherent in so much of what I'm saying about the character fixation. But we do talk a lot about in church and in we do talk a lot about projection. So that's not a foreign concept, but for so many people, it's still brand new. If you haven't done a lot of therapeutic work, the idea is still kind of like, wait, what? So I think the idea.
So here's something that everybody can relate to.
Sure,
okay?
Go ahead.
Money.
Yes.
What is money? If I reach in my pocket, I've got money. So now, what really is this?
Right.
Pieces of paper.
Right.
If I burn it, it's against the law in the United States. It's against the law to burn it because it's our God in this country. But the thing about money, it's only paper, but we're willing to give our lives for it. We're willing to work 9 to 5 for 40 years, whatever it takes to get enough pieces of paper.
Right.
What is that? That's a trance induction.
A trance. We're all in a trance. Trance is the exact right word. Yes.
And so that trance is a group projection.
Yes.
That has value. So now if I wake up from that trance and I realize it's just pieces of paper, that's okay, because as long as you're in the trance, I can still spend it. But if and the danger is, if we all wake up and it becomes valueless, we all die, because we're all dependent. We're all so interconnected, and our interconnection is through these bits of paper.
Yeah.
So that's part of the global trance that we all live in. That anybody can see, no matter how deep you are spiritually, you can certainly see the fact of that.
Oh, yes. I understand that. That is a really great one. That's a really great one. I can't believe we're already about halfway through the show. There's so much I want to talk to you about. So we are going to take a quick break. We will be right back with Eli Jaxon-Bear, the author of Fixation to Freedom. Thank you for joining us.
We'll return to the program in just a few minutes, but first, we wanted to give a special word of thanks to our podcast partner, CCU Orlando, who has helped make this episode of the Authentic Spiritual Journey possible. CCU Orlando is a welcoming community dedicated to transforming lives, celebrating diversity, and supporting soul growth. CCU Orlando is located at 771 Holden Avenue in Orlando, Florida, with Sunday services at 9 and 11 a.m. You can stream services live online, as well as learn more at christchurchunity.net. We'd also like to thank Natural Awakenings Magazine of Central Florida, Greater Orlando. Each month, Natural Awakenings magazines across the country take a practical look at the latest natural approaches to nutrition, fitness, creative expression, personal growth, and sustainable living. Natural Awakenings magazine is a free publication and is available in selected stores, health and education centers, healing centers, public libraries, and wherever free publications are located. You could learn more, including advertising opportunities for your business, by calling 407-628-0705. And finally, we'd like to extend our special thanks to Unity of Nashville, a sister ministry of CCU Orlando. If you're searching for a like-minded church community and a personal connection that supports your heart and mind in the Central Tennessee area, then join Unity of Nashville at 10 a.m. every Sunday morning at 5125 Franklin Pike. For more information, head over to unityofnashville.org. And now we return you to this week's episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey with your host, Reverend Cynthia Alice Anderson.
Welcome back, friends. We're glad you're with us. We are honored to have Eli Jaxon-Bear with us today. And I want to really encourage you, friends, if you've not read the book, to get one and read it. And it will be, my hope is, it will be for you a tool for, I will say, transcending, this trance that we're all in. I think that's really the idea behind the work in the book. And, Eli, your spiritual work comes through, beautifully. I know just from the energy, it's amazing what I can feel simply through our connection via video, but it's beautiful, and I know our listeners can feel it also. I wanted you to talk a little bit, if you will, a little bit about the core points, 9, 6, and 3, and I'd love to hear a little bit too about, for each point. And by the way, did you make up the word exteriorized? I mean, I think you made that up.
Well, I didn't make it up, but I used it in the system maybe for the first time.
Yes, right. I like the word because it really describes the behavior well. And on each of the points, and I'm looking right now at point 7, but on each of the points, for each one, there's an essence, there's a holy idea, holy path, a chief feature. So I'd love for you to speak into a little bit how those can kind of be like the holy idea, for instance, of the 7. The essence is absorption. Like what could you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what does that mean? If a 7 is their essence is absorption.
Let's do it this way.
Sure.
If everybody just takes a moment to just be really quiet and let everything settle down, and to allow yourself close your eyes if you want to and fall inside. And as you do, if you take this moment, can you discover what it is to experience purity inside, without thoughts, without emotions, without feelings, without your body? For just this moment, if it's not your body, can you feel purity? That's very good. And even if you can't, you can make believe what it would be like to feel purity.
Mm-hmm.
And then from purity, as you sink into it, can you find love? What does love feel like without an object? Without I love you or I want you to love me, but just
Mm-hmm.
the pure experience of love.
Mm-hmm.
And as you fall into love, can you experience the joy of that? The joy of pure love. That's very good. And then in that, you can discover a deeper quiet, the silence that is peace. Now, if you fall into peace inside, I don't know if it'd be like a thick black velvet texture for you or what your experience might be, but let yourself sink into the essence of peace with nothing to do with the body or the mind or the emotions or anything outside. That's very good. And now, if this loving, peaceful quiet becomes completely absorbed within itself, to sink down to something even deeper, so that just as the rain falls into the ocean, just as the river empties into the sea, this pure, peaceful, deep, quiet love can sink in and be absorbed to something even deeper. And what's aware of all this awareness doesn't change, doesn't come and go. And so this awareness is not separate
Mm-hmm.
from the empty, silent, loving, joyful, peaceful essence that is who you are. So from there, if you're willing to not pick up the next thought, if you're willing to not pick up the next egoic mind, if you're not get lost in the next wave of emotion, you can sink even deeper and the absorption goes deeper.
Mm-hmm.
That's what absorption is.
Mm-hmm.
And from here, you'll start to notice the traps that bring you back out. So the first thought, what should I say? What should I do? How can I keep this? How do I practice this? What am I missing? How do I get more? All those thoughts are a return to the fixated identity.
Yes.
And if you don't touch them, you're empty. They can't touch essence. They don't touch peace. They don't touch joy and love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question of what absorption is?
Beautiful. That's a great answer. Because you can't really answer it for another person. You have to just experience it.
Exactly.
And
otherwise, it's just another concept. And we are
right.
we have enough concepts in our world. We have enough beliefs. We don't need any more. This is the end of belief. It's the end of concept. It's the discovery of direct, true experience that doesn't need to be believed or remembered, that is as it is regardless.
Yes, yes, yes.
So beautiful.
In our class this last week, one of the things, I have a presentation, for the class, because part of the work is to explain the concept so people understand what we're doing. And so rather than the temptation, especially for the fixation I'm working with, is to try to give like step by step, help for how-tos. And, part of the trap, if you want to call it that, of being a minister is thinking you have everybody's answer.
Mhm.
And so it's both difficult and freeing when in my classes, rather than trying to tell them what to do, in the last class, and we're doing this for all the classes, so we've had 2 classes out of 4, and the question is about coming out of the fixation. Not me telling you how, but like just beginning to grow out of this need. And so the first thought, the first way to do it, of course, is to like start talking about it. But there is something, as you're saying, way deeper than talking about it. Because if we believe our theology, which our theology says, there's one presence, we are all connected, and that divinity lives in us. So if I believe my very own theology, then everybody does have their own answer. So it's so teaching that.
What people really want from you is not the answer,
Right.
the living embodiment of the truth.
Correct.
And in that, then not knowing is the gateway into discovery.
You got it. Well, when I started your book, I was in a pretty low place, and some of the behaviors I saw that were really tripping me up in a certain situation, I had never seen the deep rationalization I was doing, and I really came face to face with that, and just wow. The chatter, the mind, the inner assaults to not see what's happening. I mean, it has been really very intense process. But
That's so beautiful.
What's that?
That's so beautiful. That's the depth of your soul, that you're willing to read it in a book and get it for yourself in that depth. That's beautiful.
Well, it was kind of like bam, I was finally, I think, ready to see it and in a situation that really required it of me. So it was the material coming to me at just the right time. My soul needed it. So I've been real grateful for it as a, and I just for me, it's just it really is a tool for awakening, because I really am seeing myself, and I'm also seeing I'm also seeing in a real way how it wants to dance around with all the other fixations. I'm from a very large family, and I was the youngest, and so everybody had their part to play, and as in all families, and so so that's been really. I don't want to use the word interesting. It's been really, seeing the rationalization is bringing transparency to my thoughts and my cooperation with the trance.
Yes. Transparency is everything.
It is.
That's all we all want for each other and for ourselves.
Yeah.
And the tendency is to accuse the other of being non-transparent rather than being transparent ourselves.
Yes. I don't want to get us too off track, but I kind of had this wondering about your work as a therapist. Did you come from a Jungian background or no?
Come from what kind of background?
Jungian background?
Jungian. No, I wasn't Jungian.
Okay.
I mean, I've read Jung. I've read Jung, but I don't agree with Jung.
Yes.
So Jung's character and archetypes is his attempt at working with this material. I don't think it's successful because his ego is just too big.
That is, yes. And I'm going to stop what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But
hey, he's dead.
No, but I agree with that. I agree with that. And there's an interesting pattern with I've really worked with so much of Jung's teachings, and there's a lot of it that I think I thought at one time was amazing, but the egoic bits, the lack of the seeing the awakening in his own life, what we say down south is proofs in the pudding.
That's it.
It's either
Walk the talk, bro. Walk the talk.
you're either awakening or
Speaking of awakening, I have a question, Eli, and my apologies if this is too pedantic or whatever. But
oh no, it's okay.
I feel like with social media, there's a real big rise, and I mentioned it earlier before the break, of self-reflection. Everybody's taking a quiz. Am I an introvert? Am I an extrovert? Like, which Harry Potter house am I in?
Yeah.
Which Twilight character am I? Who do I identify with, Yoda or Obi-Wan, right? And I feel like, and my question for you, Eli, is have you noticed over the last, let's say, 10 years, with the rise of social media and with everything that brings, and social media is kind of a recurring theme just because it's so pervasive in our culture, have you noticed an interest in Enneagram, or do you see social media as this kind of dark mirror on our own egos and psyches? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not really involved with social media, so I can't really comment on it very much. Even television, I stopped watching television in 1968. So if you ask me, I've never seen a reality show ever.
Haven't missed anything. Not missed anything.
So I can't comment on a whole swath of American culture, but what I can say is that when I started in the 1950s in New York, there was no yoga, there was no spirituality, there were no gurus, there was no meditation, no one ever said the word enlightenment.
Yeah.
It was completely unknown. And then with psychedelics, with LSD, everybody kind of woke up in a certain way. And the Beatles brought in the first guru, which started this whole guru thing. And it spread. And now there's yoga on every street corner. And it's become trivialized. It's become superficial, but still it's spread wide. So it's not deep, but it's wide. And to me, that's great. Before there wasn't anything.
Right.
Now there's a wide swath of people who are doing yoga and who are meditating and going to retreats. And that has changed radically.
Yeah.
Since I started teaching. And so to me, that's a good sign. And then when those people find that what they're doing isn't enough, then they'll be ready for the next step. But that's everybody's, as you said, there are souls at all different levels. There's egoic development at all different levels.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very necessary to have ego strengthening before you can have ego transcendence.
I think that's very true. It's like, I hope I'm not getting us in the weeds, but years ago when I was first learning about really that I was a soul, and not a body and all things like that, that I had this teacher I was working with, and she said, in a one-on-one, I was like, it was a real difficult personal time. I was crying my head off, why doesn't God, give me a break? And she said, well, this is it, and I said, well, this sucks, what, this is my break. And she said, well, you need to lose your ego. I said, I just got one. And she said, exactly. And so it's what you're saying. We have to get ego strengthening before we can begin to have it obliterated by what we say, the light of the Christ or the light of awareness.
Yes.
That's how we might say it. I want to go back to the Carl Jung thing. I wanted to complete my thought. If you don't mind, Eli, I'm going to go back to this, which is to say that, because I'd taken some classes and I learned so much by studying Carl Jung, but I just found that so many of the people I was in the classes with really did not have anything I wanted spiritually. And for me, that's my number one goal. So is to awaken. And as I said to the church Sunday, why do I do all this? I want to live from my center. I want to live from the center of my being, not from these as you call them, the traps, the laying of trips, of the character fixation, the personality crap. I don't want to live from there. I want to live from the center. And so even though I thought Jung's Red Book was really amazing, and a friend gave me a copy, I was so honored to receive it. But so I'm with you on that. I just felt like I wanted to come back to that. I realized I shied away, and I really wanted to be clear in my position.
Sorry, I put him down. It's like that's not. There's something for everybody.
No, I understand that. No, and I don't take offense to that, because, like I said, as I studied over time, because the teachings on projection helped me so much of Carl Jung, but I was taking classes, and the people teaching the classes, I'm like, well, I'm not taken anywhere by their awareness. And Jung, I mean, when you look at his personal life, that's not what I want to be. And so that was an important point for me to just go, wow, I really learned a lot here, and this is not my ultimate teaching. Like, it helped me see myself, but this has been like, ego crash and burn time. And it's, even though I'm talking about my experience has been and continues to be on the spiritual journey, one of surrender, one of just when I think I know who I am, that goes, and so something else, is starting to come forward. But I'm also, feel, and I can say today, honestly, at peace, maybe for the very first time in my life. And that's really something. This is what everyone wants, is peace. And so there's some things I'm working out on this third dimensional level, but I am at peace about my decisions. I'm at peace with my life, with who I am as a person. And so even though we're talking about this as being difficult, and yes, there's surrender, and yes, there's this, obliteration of ego, I wouldn't trade that work for anything. It's the work, I think, to be doing. I've always, for the last 20 years, that's been my work of the soul. But Fixation to Freedom, you're writing about it. Your descriptions, your categorizing, for lack of a better word, your explanations, your insight into that these are character fixations was a whole new level of awareness for me. So grateful for that.
I'm so glad. So then when it comes down to the very bottom nitty-gritty of it, when you asked about absorption,
yes,
it's the one who says, I have a soul.
Yes.
Is the one that surrenders into soul.
Yeah.
That's the extinction that's talked about. So it's really not an obliteration of ego, because there is no ego to obliterate.
Exactly. Yes. Understood. Yeah.
So it's just really just surrendering of the personal identity.
Yes.
Into something deeper, and that's absorption.
The identification with, Yes. Well, in terms of, because we are actually about out of time. If you were talking to someone brand new to some of these ideas, how would you kind of shine the light for them a certain direction, or would you? What would you encourage?
My first question to anybody is, what do you want?
Yeah.
Most people have no idea what they want. Most people live in biological, conditioned, societal wants. This is what you should do, and this is what will make you happy. If you work hard, and you want that, and you're successful in that, that will make you happy. And then if you have a family, that'll make you happy. But it didn't have children, that'll make you happy. It didn't have another child, that'll make you happy.
Right.
People live their lives in this conditioning of what they think they should want and what they biologically want to want, because you biologically want to breed and you want to support your children. That's biologically wired. But what I really want is never asked.
Yeah.
And so I always start with asking, what do you want?
And
you then discover what's deeper.
Yeah.
You discover, if you had that, what will that do for you? And if you had that, what will that do for you? And then you start to go into what the deeper motivations are, and then you can start the real work.
Exactly. The real work. There you are. Well, friends, we have heard from a master today, Eli Jaxon-Bear. And again, I so thank you for being on the show. And we will be sending a special donation to your organization. So I thank you for taking the time, and we send our love and blessings also to your wife and spiritual partner as well.
Yeah, we will have links to Eli's books in our show notes, as well as other links that you can see and learn more about his work at experienceofthesoul.com. You want to click on the episode 057, show number 57.
Show number 57. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, friends, and blessings on the journey.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Authentic Spiritual Journey, presented by CCU Orlando, Natural Awakenings Magazine, and Unity of Nashville. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is also made possible through the continued support of our angel patrons, Dove Borland, Peter Gibson, Paul Caswell, JJ Hamilton, Arlene Meyer, Kathy and Terry, Marcia Mott, and Nora Miles. If you would like to support the channel as a patron on an ongoing basis or through a one-time gift, head over to experienceofthesoul.com/support. And if you enjoy this podcast, help spread the word by sharing it with your friends and leaving a 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, or the platform of your choice. The Authentic Spiritual Journey is copyright 2019, Cynthia Alice Anderson, all rights reserved. Our theme music is composed by Dave Croft and used with permission. The Experience of the Soul podcast channel is a production of 818 Studios.